Lately, I've been listening to what's his face, Les Brown, a very famous motivational speaker. He said that there's no point telling the world, you know what they did to me. He said that 80% don't care and 50% are glad it's you. But then I realized that I'm not doing this for the approval of any Tom, Dick, or Harry. I'm doing this for the approval of myself. So why not do it? So continuing where I left off, I forgot to bring any shades with me. March 7th, 2013. I got a job and I got conditional discharge. All my firearms were confiscated, meaning I lost all my firearms. It was about $20,000 or $25,000 worth of firearms. But hey, at least I got my freedom, right? The conditional discharge that I got, the conditions were that I had to do about 20 hours of community service and I had to report to my probation officer. Until I had done my community service hours, I was supposed to report to her. Once those were done, then my conditions were over. If you get a conditional discharge, it shows in your record for a period of total 4 years, I think. So once the conditions are met, for example, I got a 1-year conditional discharge. After 1 year, it turns into an absolute discharge, and absolute discharge means that after 3 years, it gets wiped off of your criminal record. That doesn't sound too bad, right? The only problem was that until I had finished my conditional discharge or my community service hours, I still had to, stay in my Peterborough house, so which was about like 120 kilometers from Toronto. The reason why I'm saying this is that the job I got was in Toronto. So for about 2 months, I had to travel from Peterborough to Toronto by car every day because I had no place in Toronto until my conditions were finished. I did that. I got a job, I was working, and after about 2 months, right after my conditions were finished, I was on the bench as a business intelligence consultant. But after 2 months, I think it was in June, I got called or I got assigned to Loblaw, Canada. Their head office was at Brampton, Ontario. And luckily, I got a place in Toronto. All my computers were still with OPP. Everything, including my tablet, my cell phone, and some other things. I forgot the name of. Yeah, all my computer, all my hard drives were with them. I thought that once the case is over, things would have gotten better, right? They were simply going to return my stuff. Well, I talked to my lawyer. I told him to have them return my stuff because I had a lot of material. I still do in my computer. All my SAP training material was in there. I had made some virtual machines so I could practice on those virtual machines. So everything was in there. And he said that I'm working on it, but I don't know why they're not returning your stuff. Eventually, in April of 2013, my lawyer told me that finally they've agreed to return all your stuff, all your computers, and you contact such and such person. The person's name was Paul Duarte, or Duarte, whatever you want to call it. Paul Fernando Duarte. That's when I figured out that he was the guy in charge of the whole operation, the guy who had planned the whole game to arrest me and charge me with firearms-related offenses, whatever you want to call it. I called him, I said, I emailed him actually. I told him that I want all my computers back. I was told that you're supposed to give me my stuff back. He said, yeah, but I'm in Ottawa. So I'll be back on Monday or whenever. I said, okay. I told him I will come during my lunch hour from work and I'm going to get all my stuff back. I think it did not happen on Monday. It took another few days. And then he called me. He said, yeah, you can come. All your stuff is at OPP detachment, OPP Toronto detachment. It was right on 401. As I went to OPP detachment, you might think that, what did I have? Like, why? I was just going to collect my stuff. When I got in there, and he said, I'm just going to be outside in a minute. As Paul entered, the big mustache guy and whatnot, he said, oh, I'm just going to do a little pat down just to make sure, just a security protocol, whatnot. I said, okay, cool. And right next to the reception, he said, well, why don't you just go ahead and sit in that room? I'm going to bring all your stuff back in a minute. I was patted down, kind of like a security check. And then I was sent into a room. The room had like a metal door. And as I entered into the room, like I entered straight into the room, on my right side, I saw a person sitting in a red shirt. A short-heighted person, petite fella. And he had a folder in his hand. In case you haven't figured out, it was an interrogation room and they tried to lock me up into an interrogation. As I got in there, he shook my hand, said, my name is David Oulette. I'm with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, INSET, Integrated National Security Enforcement Team. We deal with people and terrorism and whatnot, something to that effect. That's when I figured out, okay. And then he showed me, he did not hand it over to me, but he showed me a warrant. And he said, this is the warrant that we use to go through your stuff, your electronic devices. And in that electronic devices, what they had sworn to the magistrate or who not was that they had reason to believe that I was preparing some kind of an armed conflict because I had guns, so I was preparing for an armed conflict. That's what they said. And the minute I saw that, I was like, what? Are you out of your mind? He said, that's what we want to know. This big folder that had all kind of bull crap about me, saying that I am a member of a terrorist organization called Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat, because I'm a Sunni. See, Sunnis are called Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat. There are two major sects claiming to be Muslims among the Muslims. One is the Sunni, the other one are called the Shias. So the Shias are obviously called Shias, and the Sunnis are basically, Sunni is a short form of Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, the people who follow the Prophet, peace and blessings of God be upon him, and the group of his companions. So hence we are called Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat. In Pakistan, a group that may have been proscribed, they started calling themselves Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat. That group is called Sipah Sahaba. They're very popular in Pakistan for good or bad reasons, but they are popular. But they started calling themselves Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat. You're going to find out in the future videos what the heck happened after that and how stupid these people are when it comes to Muslims and Islam and labeling people. And then they said that, okay, you're Mr. Gumman, you're connected with Mr. Ilyas Gumman. I said, yeah. What's wrong with that? Maulana Ilyas Gumman is a famous scholar in Pakistan. He also had been falsely accused of a lot of things, but he always got acquitted. But apparently being acquitted of crimes is not sufficient for Canada or people who are hell-bent on labeling you a terrorist. Anyway, so there was one place where Maulana Gumman was giving a speech, and there was this SSP flag, like Sipa Sabha Pakistan flag at the background. Now, when you're going out giving speeches, do you actually take a good look at the flag or what's on the backdrop? Have you ever done that? Tell me about it. Because when you're busy, I've met Maulana Riyaz Gumman, I've spent some time with him. That guy is super busy. He barely gets time to sleep, so, at that time, for him to scan what's on the background, he just had to deliver his part of the speech and just had to go. So they said, oh, look, this person has a HSB flag on the background. I told him that, I really don't have time for this conversation, and I'm really running late because I had to travel like 20 minutes one way from Richmond Hill to OPP Toronto detachment during a busy work day. You go ahead and do your calculation and tell me how long it takes for you. And I only had about an hour. I had to collect my stuff and get back to my office. I was employed by Adastra Canada, by the way. Anyway, as I was sitting over there, David Oulette, he told me that I know that you have been recording police officers or law enforcement officers. So if you are, I would ask you to stop the recording. Stop recording us. I would ask if you don't do that. I had a BlackBerry in my hand, a white BlackBerry Curve. I handed it over to him. He said, it's okay, I trust you. A minute ago, you were saying that I'm a terrorist, and then all of a sudden you're trusting me. But anyway, that's what they do. He showed me all this stuff. I said, what's the point of this? I'm here to collect my computers. That's what I want to do. And by the way, as I moved into that interrogation room, Paul Duarte had shut the door behind me. He said, oh, just so that, you get privacy. I said, why do I need privacy, man? Just give me my computers. After a while, I said, look, I'm getting up. And he brought, Paul had, I told him I don't have time for this conversation. I'm going to leave. And as soon as I got up, this whole thing may have taken more than 5 or 6 minutes, or maybe 10 minutes at max. As soon as I got up, Paul opened the door, as if they were in another room listening to the whole conversation. I said, I'm going to go. If you don't have my computers, it's okay. I'm going to come back whenever, deliver my computers. He said, oh, your computers are coming. And then I told him, I don't have time for this conversation. Eventually, they brought in my computer. He had this one last look. He asked me this question, oh, look at this page. Mr. Gumman had, he has this SCP flag on the background. I said, what's your problem with it? I said, why don't you invite him to Canada, have your Canadian flag, waving in the background. He'll give his speech there too. His purpose is to educate people. What's your problem with it? So he said, okay. And when you're trying to put on some kind of a poker face, one thing that I've figured out with all of these so-called Canadian intelligence personnel is that they try to put on a different face. In our language, we call these people hypocrites, but anyway, they try to put on a different face. But when they figure out that their plan isn't working, there's this little twitch, less than a second long twitch, as if he's losing control of the situation. Because I knew that I really did not have to talk to the police. So he asked me, finally, he said that, is Aqiq Ansari a member of Sipai Sahaba? I said no. With a smirk on his face, as if he was trying to put on another face. But he tried really hard. And his last trap was that, as I was carrying my computer, he was like, oh, you built this computer yourself? Obviously, I knew that they knew I made this thing. I really did not have to answer that question, but I did answer it anyway. He said, you build it yourself, because obviously then had I answered in affirmation, it would ascertain for them that indeed the contents in the computer belong to me. I said, yeah, I did that. That was a stupid thing done by me. But anyway, I took all my computers, I got back, and I took them home. What follows is very interesting. I told you I got a job as a consultant, and I started working at Astra Canada, and then one of my clients was Loblaw Canada. I went in there at President's Choice Circle in Brampton, Ontario. And once you go in there, in the building, in the basement, there's no cell phone signals. I was busy with my work, and then when I got out, I got a call from a private number. Who could it be? It was them. He said, I would like to sit down with you and whatnot. I said, I'm good. I don't want to talk to you. At one time, I told him that if you have any questions about Mr. Ghumman or what's his name, Ittihad Ahl-Sunnat wal Jamaat. It's called Alimi Ittihad Ahl-Sunnat wal Jamaat. That was the name of the group that he was running. It's an academic group. It has nothing to do with terrorism, any kind of, what do you call this thing? Like any kind of activism. Nothing. Political, nothing. It was an educational academic group. So feel free to ask me those questions. And I connected him to another person. His name was Maulana Abid Jamshed. And we're going to talk about that later as well. How much influence these clowns have on people in third world countries, you're going to find out later as well. That's what I told him. I got back home. I started doing my own job. And then again, I got another call, another call, and another call. I kept getting calls from these people. I said, don't ask me questions. I'm not going to answer your questions. That's it. If I'm not under arrest or anything like that, I refuse to answer any of your questions. Obviously, I had to live my own life. But they just wouldn't give up. So first it was David Oulette. He also contacted my brother, who was in Edmonton at that time. And then David Oulette and another person, his name is Pete Simmons. They contacted my brother, and they actually went to visit him in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. You might wonder what the heck's going on. And they tried to ask my brother to convince me. They asked my brother to convince me to talk to them. I said, I'm not going to talk to them. It's really simple. I told him that, look, I don't want to have a conversation with these people. My brother, as naive as he is, he thought that talking to the RCMP or talking to police or the intelligence CSIS might actually help me at all. But I had seen enough, I had consulted enough people, I had seen enough videos to know better that these people are never looking forward to exonerate you. They're not looking forward to help you. They're always looking forward to building a case against you. Remember, when they arrest you, they say anything you say can and will be used against you. It's never in your favor or for you. It's always going to be against you. I finished my work, and then I got assigned to another place. It was at International Finance Data Services, IFDS. And another place, I was working at like 3 or 4 streams at one time because I was technically that good. Eventually, I get an email from my brother saying that the RCMP wants to do an exit interview with you. So they have decided to close your file. Now remember, I had realized that if they're following me around, I knew that they were following me around. They were tracing my calls still. So I wasn't out of the woods, whatever you want to call it, yet. So I know they were working really hard to build a case against me. I went to a lawyer who I had heard from somebody, and I thought he was some kind of a rogue or what do you want to call this thing? Some kind of a very radical, with some very amazing lawyer. His name was Ansar Farouk, and he had helped this person previously, helped a couple of people in the past. But the thing is that he had also drained those poor people of their money. I think it was more than $1 million, as I found out. So anyway, that may have been his fees, that may have been his quote, whatever you want to call it. He was charging like $550 an hour. Yeah. So I went to his, I found some time and I went to his office, and I said that to his assistant, I think her name was Sana Ansari, and I said, I would like to speak to Ansar Farouk, Mr. Farouk. She said, well, you're going to have to get an appointment for consultation. I said, well, it's a bit of an issue for me. And she said that, why don't you get any appointment over the phone? I had left my phone in my car because I did not want to have this conversation being recorded. But I told Sana Ansari that I think RCMP is trying to set me up, and they're trying to fabricate a case against me, so I would like to talk to them about it. And surely enough, Ansar, he agreed to talk to me for initial consultation. I think I paid him whatnot. But then he said that during this whole thing, he listened to me, and he said that, well, what we can do is that until they have arrested you, there's nothing to worry about. But you don't have to talk to them. And what you can do is that submit about like $15,000 into a fund, so that in case something happens, if I end up talking to them, I can withdraw my fee from there. I said, okay. I had lost about more than $20,000 worth of firearms, and then I had spent about $36,000 or $37,000 on my case, paying the lawyer, what's his face, Ed Berlew, for my firearms case. Where was I going to get $15,000? I had just gotten a job. So I said, okay, cool, whatever. And then my brother called me in and said that the RCMP has decided to close your file, but they would like to do an exit interview with you. The exit interview is something that, they're going to ask some final question. I said, well, I'm not going to talk to them. Nice try, but I'm not going to talk to them. If they want to talk to me, they can pay my lawyer's fee. His name is Ansar Farouk. Pay his retainer. And then I'm going to speak in front of my lawyer. Well, they did not talk to me. They, again, played a tactic. Peter Simmons, he played a tactic, and he called Ansar Farouk and said, well, Mr. Farouk, something to the effect that he was my lawyer and they would like to talk to Mr. Aqiq in his presence. Ansar Farouk called me and he said that apparently they wanted to, well, you haven't retained me, so I can't be a lawyer until you pay my retainer fee. I said, well, I didn't ask that. And then I got an email from Ansar Farouk's office saying that until you pay a retainer, we will not be able to assist in that matter. So there goes this hero lawyer, all that bullshit. We're going to come to that later on as well. My probation was ending in March 7th, obviously, of 2014. And at that time, I was working for a company through Adastra called Kinross Gold. I finished everything. I decided on March 7th, after my 1-year period was over, on March 15th, I decided to take a 1-month leave, 1-month vacation. And I decided to go to Pakistan to clear my head, because Canada had become like a shithole, a hellhole for me. I was isolated. I was constantly being followed. whatever you can think of, right? I was tired. So March 15, 2014, that's when I went to Pakistan for 1 month.